When I was a small child, I was terrified of the dark. I still am, but back when I was around 6 years old, I couldn't go a full night without crying out for one of my parents to search beneath my bed, or in my closet for whatever monster I thought was waiting to eat me. Even with a nightlight, I would still see dark shapes moving around the corners of the room, or strange faces looking in on me from my bedroom window. My parents would do their best to console me, telling me that it was just a bad dream or a trick of the light. But in my young mind, I was positive that the second I fell asleep, the bad things would get me. Most of the time, I would just hide under the blankets until I became tired enough to stop worrying. But every now and then, I would become so panicked that I would run screaming into my parents' room, waking up my brother and sister in the process. After an ordeal like that, there would be no way anyone would be getting a full night's rest. Eventually, after one particularly traumatizing night, my parents had had enough. Unfortunately for them, they understood the futility in arguing with a 6-year-old and knew that they would be unable to convince me to rid myself of childish fears through reason and logic. They had to be clever. It was my mother's idea to stitch together my little bedtime friend. She collected a large assortment of random pieces of fabric in her sewing machine and created what I would later refer to as Mr. Ickbar Beaglestein, or Ick for short. Ick was a sock monster, as my mother called him. He was made to keep me safe while I slept at night, by scaring away all the other monsters. He was pretty damn creepy, I had to admit. Honestly, looking back on it all now, I'm still impressed that my mom could think of something so strange and disturbing looking. Ickbar had the stitched together look of a Frankenstein gremlin, with big white button eyes and floppy cat ears. His little arms and legs were made from a pair of my sister's black and white striped socks, and the half of his face that was green was made from one of my brother's tall football socks. His head could have been described as bulbous, and for his mouth, my mom attached a piece of white fabric and sewed in a zigzag pattern to shape a wide grin of sharp teeth. I loved him at once. From then on, Ick never left my side, so long as it was after dusk, of course. Ick didn't like the sun and would get upset if I tried to bring him to school with me. But that was okay. I only needed him at night to keep away the boogeymen, which was what he was good at. So every night at bedtime, Ick would tell me where the monsters were hiding, and I would place him near the section of my room closest to the spookiness. If there was something in the closet, Ick would block the door. If there was a dark creature scratching at my window, Ick would be pressed up against the glass. If there was a big hairy beast under my bed, then under the bed he went. Sometimes the monsters weren't even in my room. Sometimes, they would hide in my dreams, and Ickbar would have to come with me into my nightmares. It was fun bringing Ick into my dream world, as he and I would spend hours fighting off ghouls and demons. The best part was, in my dreams, Ick could talk to me for real.
"How much do you love me?"
He would ask. More than anything, I would always tell him. One night in a dream, after I had lost my first tooth, Ick asked me for a favor.
"Can I have your tooth?"
I asked him why.
"To help me kill the bad things,"
He said. The next morning at breakfast, my mom asked me where my tooth went. From what she told me, the tooth fairy didn't find it under my pillow. When I told her that I gave it to Ickbar, she just shrugged and went back to feeding my little sister. From then on, every time I lost a tooth, I would give it to Ick. He would always thank me, of course, and tell me that he loved me. Eventually, though, I ran out of baby teeth, and I was beginning to get a little too old to still be playing with dolls. So Ick just sat there on my bookshelf, collecting dust, slowly fading away from my attention. Over time, the nightmares, however, became worse than ever, so bad that they even began to follow me to the waking world, terrorizing every dark corner or rustle in the bushes. After one particularly bad night biking home from a friend's house, where I swore a pack of rabid dogs were chasing me, I got home to find something strange waiting for me in my room. There, on my bed, standing fully upright in the soft glow of the moonlight from my window, was Ickbar. At first, I just thought my eyes were playing tricks on me again. They had been all evening, so I tried to flick on the lights. Another flick of the light switch, then another, and another, with no change to the darkness. It was then that I started to get nervous. I backed away slowly towards the door behind me, my eyes never leaving the shape of Ick's silhouette, my hand awkwardly outstretched behind, reaching for the doorknob. I was just about to get my ass out of there when I heard the door slam itself shut, locking me into the blackness. In nothing but shadows and silence, I stood frozen in place, not even breathing. For how long, I can't say. But after what felt like a lifetime of cold fear, I heard the shrill, familiar voice.
You stopped feeding me, so why should I protect you?
Protect me from what?
Let me show you.
I blinked once, and everything changed. I wasn't in my bedroom anymore. I was somewhere else. It wasn't hell, but the comparison wasn't far off. It was some sort of forest. A horrible, nightmarish place where partial embryonic abortions hung from the canopy, and the ground swarmed with carnivorous insects. A thick fog wafted through the air, and with it the stench of rotting meat, while chartreuse lightning flashed across the night sky. In the distance, I could hear the agonizing screams of something not quite human. My head throbbed like it was about to explode, the pain forcing out a river of tears. In my mind, I heard his voice again.
This is what your reality would become without me.
I felt earth-shaking footsteps approaching, fast.
I am the only one who can stop it.
It was behind me now, huge and angry, hot breath across my back.
Bring me what I need, and I will.
I woke up before I could turn around. The following day, I raided my parents' closet for my brother's baby teeth, giving them all to Ickbar. Almost immediately, the night terrors ceased, and I was more or less able to go on about my life as normal. From time to time, I would have to sneak into my little sister's room and snatch what was meant for the tooth fairy, or strangle one of the neighborhood cats and pry out its sharp little incisors. Anything to ward off the visions, anything from a shark tooth necklace to a cavity ridden by cuspid. I also began to notice that Ick would move about my room whenever I left for any length of time, rearranging my stuff and hanging additional curtains. He was even beginning to look more lifelike somehow. In the right light, his teeth would glisten, and he was warm to the touch. As much as he creeped me out, I couldn't work up the courage to just destroy him, knowing perfectly well where that would leave me. So I went on collecting teeth for Ick throughout all of high school and college. The older I got, the more things I would learn to fear, the more teeth Ick would need to keep me safe. I'm 22 years old now, with a decent job, my own apartment, and a set of dentures. It's been almost a month since Ick's last meal, and the horrors are starting to crowd around me once more. I took a detour through a parking garage after work tonight, found a man fumbling with his car keys. His teeth were stained yellow from a lifetime of cigarettes and coffee. Even still, I had to use a hammer to get out the molars. When I got back to my apartment, he was waiting for me. On the ceiling in the corner, 2 white eyes and mouth of razors.
How much do you love me?
He asks. More than anything, I reply, taking off my coat. More than anything in the world. Something had been bugging me all day. Something important. Something that I should remember. But I couldn't. The more I tried to remember it, the more it eluded me. Typically, if traffic allows, I would be at the station by 7, topping up my thermal before anyone in my squad even pulled into the lot. Dorothy would be the only one there, punching out from her overnight rotation as soon as I sat down at my desk. But traffic today was hell, so I got there at 7:15, and Dorothy looked at me with a smirk, as if about to comment on my uncharacteristic time of arrival. 7:30. I stared at the calendar. The 5th of March. I still couldn't put a finger on it. What was it about today? I searched the desk for clues. Somewhere among the mountains of unorganized paperwork and general desktop clutter, my badge, pictures of my wife, statements, court briefs. I was supposed to be at the courthouse. How on earth did I forget? I checked the time. Shit. 7:45. I was going to be late. But better late than never. I rushed out of the building and into my cruiser. It's a 20-minute drive. I made it in 10. 10:15. Coffee was cold. I took a gulp anyway. Lucky guy was off the hook. Entrapment. What a fucking joke. His buddies aren't going to be as lucky, I assured myself. I walked to my cruiser and noticed cars on the road decelerating as they passed by. They always do. Except for that one guy in the black Camaro. He was going at least 15 over. Someone else will get him. I reached into my jacket for a piece of Nicorette. Nothing there. I left them on the kitchen counter. Again. That'd be the second time this week. Rowley smokes. I'll get one off him. 2 o'clock. Rowley was still on patrol. I was tempted to radio him in just to pass me a butt. The craving made me agitated as hell. At 2:45, I was summoned to the captain's office about a death threat. A death threat made out to me. Apparently, not taking a bribe from the cartel was a death penalty. I declined his offer for time off, but agreed to stop overworking myself. 4:30. The station seemed quieter than usual. Something seemed off. A weird vibe in the air. What's with John? Every time I caught him looking my way, he would shift away his glance. Was there something on my face? I ran a hand over my face to check. I forgot to shave today. Fuck it. I was done in 30 minutes anyway. Couldn't wait for that hot shower. 5:20. Traffic was hell again. Raindrops strummed away on the roof of my car. The windshield wipers were making that squeaky sound. An idiot just cut me off. Around 6:05, I pulled into my driveway. My wife's car wasn't there. She's usually home by this time. I stayed in the cruiser for another minute and looked over my shoulders, to the left, and then the right, unsure of what exactly I was looking out for. Just instincts at work, I guess. I stepped out of the car and walked to the curb. I saw a black car parked on the side of the road, about half a block down. I couldn't tell the make and model. The pouring rain made it hard to see. If I had to guess, it looked like a Camaro. Like the one I saw speeding away at the courthouse this morning. My muscles tensed. I lowered myself into a half crouch and tiptoed backwards towards the cruiser in my driveway. I ducked behind it and peeked over at the entrance of my house. The blinds moved. Someone had been watching me from the inside. I was sure of it. I drew my gun. I went around the side to the back of the house, staying low as I tread in the shadow. I should call for backup, I thought. I instinctively grabbed at my belt, where the radio usually hung. Nothing here. I'd left it in the cruiser or at the station. But it wasn't the time to ponder about that. I took out the cell phone to call my partner instead. My thumb hovered above the screen. My wife came to mind. I decided to call her first, made sure she was okay. I dialed her number. It rang. The phone was in the house, but nobody picked up. Only 2 rings later, the call went to her voicemail. A heavy feeling weighed in my chest. The black car, the death threat, the feeling that bothered me all day. I pointed my gun straight in front of me and took 3 steps back. Then I ran forward and kicked the door on the spot next to the knob. The door flew open. A split second later, someone jumped out from the side. My finger was already on the trigger. I pulled. 6:15. The lights came on. Dorothy screamed. Rowley slowly rose from behind the counter. The others came out of hiding. Their mouths were open, but no one said a thing. My wife was lying in a pool of blood in front of me. It was my birthday. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommates that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park, quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment. When I first noticed him, at the far end of the street on my side was a silhouette of a man, dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky, and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street, and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure, due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him, and then he started moving towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. Except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away, or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all. But I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the smiling man crept towards me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me. Still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the fuck do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. What the fuck? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go, until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road, and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in the city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see.